Hello, I'm Jeff Sawyer, CCI's Director of Employer and Professional Network Development. This Future Forward segment features Jodi Hilty, President and Chief Scientist of the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative. Jodi has over 20 years of experience in conservation, research, and application of science-based solutions to complex conservation challenges. She graduated from Middlebury in 1993 with a degree in geography. Jodi is joining us to share her learnings from her extensive career in environmental conservation, including the top challenges in the conservation field, some of the leading scientific and technological developments affecting the conservation field, and her career advice for students to position themselves to enter this field in the future. Jodi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today. I appreciate it.
Jodi, just to set the stage for our conversation, can you give us some ideas as to the dimensions of the environmental conservation field?
Oh, it's enormous, yes, and it's a pretty exciting time to be in this field because it's rapidly changing. In my world, I focus on biological conservation of plants and animals and that intersection with humanity. In the broader arena, environmental conservation can include pollutants and climate change and many other facets of how we keep a healthy planet for humans and for nature.
So if you just comment on some of the major, I'll say, players within the field, both in terms of public and private nonprofit organizations that are kind of sharing a common focus in their efforts.
Sure. I think there are a lot of different players in this field. Some of them are the scientists, and scientists can be at academic institutions, they can be at think tanks, they can also be at nonprofit organizations like I am. There are also government agencies. They range in skill sets from scientists to managers, to policymakers, communicators. There's a whole host of tools that are needed to move forward conservation. And then there's the conservation or NGO community, if you will. Within the NGO community, you can have the sort of advocacy, really loud organizations. You can have organizations that are more community-based, organizations who are working to bring people together. You can also have entities like land trusts. Those are organizations that are primarily focused on working with private landowners to achieve conservation on private lands. Jeff, I would add that there are also indigenous peoples who have traditional rights across much of North America. And what's really exciting today is that we are seeing increasing indigenous-led conservation. And I think that that's a field that's really cracking open.
Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that you face in this field?
Yeah, I think one of those challenges is that about 2% of funding from an NGO perspective, all of the giving to nonprofit organizations, about 2% of that goes to sort of animal and nature conservation. And a big chunk of that actually goes to domestic animals, like animal shelters and others. So there is a really small pool of resources to really push forward on large visions like ours, like the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative vision, right? So resources are always a challenge for us. I think the other major issue is societal values, right? How much do we care about maintaining conservation of particular places versus how much do we care about short-term return and in terms of finances? And that's a real conflict area for conservation.
Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do at Y2Y?
Sure. So as an organization, we're about connecting and protecting this region all the way from below Yellowstone National Park all the way to the Yukon and Arctic Circle. And in order to do that work, we need to bring people together. And so it's about building collaborations and moving together with the best available science and knowledge to resolve these really tricky issues that we as a human society often inadvertently put forward. Develop or not develop. And so what I do is I direct a small team of scientists, a small team of conservationists who work with various different entities. It might be working with Indigenous peoples where there are shared visions. It might be working with industry around where they might be looking to develop in the landscape. It might be looking to work with governments to find information to better manage particular lands, or it might be working with smaller communities and even individual landowners to increase conservation in a particular place.
Can you tell us a little bit about the role of science and technology in this field?
Oh, it's enormous. So in the best of all cases, science and knowledge, traditional knowledge being an example of that, are really important for guiding how and where we prioritize our conservation. So, for example, we know that wolverines are a really scarce animal on the landscape. They're really difficult to study. And so until the recent decades, we really didn't know anything about them. Thanks to the hard work of a few dedicated scientists, we now have an increasing knowledge about wolverines, what their needs are, and what it would really take to conserve them. So if we want to conserve wolverines in the US Rockies, we actually can't think on the scale of one national park. So for example, in Grand Teton National Park, that's enough room for 2, maybe 3 wolverines. If we want to conserve a viable long-term wolverine population, we actually have to think about not only the wolverines in the US Rockies, but all the way up into Canada to get to a large enough viable population that it could last for a long time. So that's an example of the science. In terms of technology, the technology revolution has been incredible. So whether it's our ability to model and map at really large scale, something that we really couldn't do in the 70s and 80s, or whether it's our ability to track animals, whether it's little small birds or whether it's the very elusive wolverine or other critters. That technology has really improved. I think one of the most exciting areas of technology has really been in DNA and the ability to use DNA to understand actually the diversity of maybe an entire watershed. It's just incredible how that technology helps us to understand what's going on in any particular place, what's there, and can help inform how we might conserve it in the long term.
Super. Are there other challenges limiting progress towards your conservation goals?
Well, I think in the Y2Y region, one of the other challenges that we face is that it's an awesome place to come visit. So some of the world's most visited parks are places like Yellowstone National Park and Banff National Park. And it's how do we manage that so that we don't actually destroy what people are coming to see, but also how do we manage that visitor experience so that it truly is a nature experience and not a crowd experience. And along with that, as people both are coming to visit and increasingly coming to move, of course, there are a lot of COVID refugees that were looking to get out of the big cities and have been moving to the Rockies to escape. And it's always been an incredibly popular place where people want to live. And so there are more and more people recreating on the landscape. People are also recreating in really different ways. So, I think right now, one of the challenges that managers are facing are that bicycles are changing really fast. So we had traditional bikes, then we got all sorts of gizmos that made it easier to ride further into the backcountry. And now we have electric bikes, right? So now people who are less experienced and aren't as in good a shape and maybe or maybe not as experienced can really get into the backcountry. Well, that can be great, but it also can be dangerous, both for wildlife and for people. And so keeping ahead of emerging technologies as we continue to manage for both people having a great experience in nature and maintaining nature is something that's really tough for us.